At 5:23 p.m. local time, a United States Air Force F-16 from the 421st Fighter Squadron was flying top cover for a U.S. naval task force operating along the coast of Yemen. The mission had been routine by every measurable standard. No unusual radar contacts, no hostile aircraft, just a steady patrol line drawn over open water, designed to deter interference and reassure the ships below. That routine ended without warning. Unseen by the pilot, a Houthi surface-to-air missile battery positioned inland near Hodeidah had already completed its targeting cycle. Ground-based radar had detected the aircraft, refined its track, and transitioned from search to fire control mode. Power output stabilized. Illumination narrowed. The system was no longer observing. It was committing. Then the missile left the rail. The weapon was an SA-6, a Soviet-era system that, despite its age, remains lethal under the right conditions. With a maximum effective range of roughly 23 kilometers and a top speed approaching Mach 2.8, the engagement window was brutally compressed. From launch to potential impact, the pilot had seconds to react. The first indication came through the aircraft's sensors. The radar warning receiver spiked. Tones shifted sharply. The F-16's threat display confirmed the situation instantly. This was no longer a search radar sweeping the sky. This was fire control energy. Someone on the ground had decided to take the shot. The pilot reacted without hesitation. He pushed the nose down and drove the aircraft into a steep dive, pulling the jet from 30,000 feet toward 15,000 in a matter of seconds. The maneuver wasn't panic. It was geometry. The SA-6 is a semi-active radar-guided missile. Unlike modern active seekers, it relies on continuous illumination from a ground radar to guide it toward its target. Disrupt that illumination, distort it, or complicate the fire control solution, and the missile's accuracy degrades rapidly. The dive helped, but it didn't end the threat. A second launch followed. Now, the pilot wasn't dealing with a single inbound missile. He was facing a coordinated volley. Alerts stacked on the display as the F-16 began aggressive, evasive maneuvers. Sharp turns, rapid changes in altitude. Every movement calculated to distort the radar picture, feeding the missile guidance loop. But those maneuvers came with a cost. At extreme angles off the aircraft's nose, even advanced radars lose effectiveness. Tracking quality drops. Situational awareness narrows. With barely 18 seconds to react, the pilot was operating at the edge of what the aircraft's sensors could reliably provide. Erratic maneuvering degraded radar performance further. Although the system could theoretically track dozens of targets, its effectiveness dropped sharply when threats approached from wide off-bore sight angles. In practical terms, the F-16 was momentarily blind to some of the incoming missiles. That's when the next layer of defense took over. Mounted on the wing pylons were integrated countermeasure systems designed to react faster than any human ever could. Ultraviolet sensors detected the missile plumes almost instantly, independent of radar input. Flares deployed, chaff followed. Infrared decoys burst outward as radar-reflective chaff clouds bloomed behind the aircraft, saturating the air with false targets. The missiles hesitated. Their seekers struggled to discriminate between the real aircraft and the decoy cloud. But the lock still wasn't fully broken, so the pilot went to the final option. Mounted beneath the fuselage was an electronic warfare pod capable of jamming across a wide range of frequencies using digital radio frequency memory techniques. The system activated instantly, replaying distorted radar returns back toward the ground radar guiding the missiles. The effect was immediate. The missiles lost coherent guidance. Their connection to the fire control radar fractured. Accuracy collapsed. Forced into unguided flight, the weapons passed harmlessly past the F-16 and detonated far behind it. The fighter survived. But the engagement wasn't over. 44 minutes later, at 6:07 p.m. local time, a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone launched from Djibouti was conducting a routine reconnaissance mission roughly 50 miles northeast of Hodeidah. The aircraft was monitoring Houthi supply convoys moving inland, reinforcing positions closer to the coast. The drone's mission was quiet, methodical, predictable. Then the warning came. Frustrated by their failure to shoot down the manned fighter, Houthi operators tried again. Another SA-6 launch. This time, the target was slower, unmanned, less agile, but still protected. The Reaper's missile warning system detected the launch almost immediately. Within seconds, the aircraft initiated countermeasures while climbing above 15,000 feet to keep the incoming missile outside its most vulnerable geometry directly beneath the airframe. Flares deployed in rapid succession. Chaff followed. A dense decoy cloud formed beneath the drone, confusing the missile seeker during its terminal phase. But unlike a fighter jet, a drone cannot rely on violent maneuvering to defeat a missile. The missile detonated close enough to cause damage. Shrapnel from the warhead peppered the Reaper's right wing, puncturing the structure and damaging control surfaces. The aircraft remained airborne, but barely. The drone returned to base. After landing, maintainers discovered multiple penetrations caused by steel fragments from the missile's warhead. The damage was serious, but survivable. The Reaper would fly again. What mattered most wasn't the damage to the drone. It was the timing. The Reaper had not been flying an aggressive strike profile. It wasn't conducting a suppression mission or probing enemy defenses. It was doing exactly what it had done dozens of times before. Quiet surveillance, long endurance, predictable routing. And that predictability was the point. When the missile detonated close enough to pepper the wing with shrapnel, it forced a reassessment that went far beyond the aircraft itself. This wasn't a warning shot fired blindly into the sky. It was a calculated engagement against a known flight pattern. Someone on the ground had been watching. That realization mattered more than any single missile launch, because surface-to-air systems are not dangerous simply because they exist. They are dangerous when operators believe they can fire, observe the result, and survive the aftermath. The Houthis had now done exactly that, twice in under an hour. The first launch tested capability, the second tested resolve. From the operator's perspective, the outcome looked encouraging. A manned fighter had been forced into evasive action. An unmanned aircraft had been damaged. Neither had struck back immediately. To the Houthis, that looked like space. To U.S. planners, it looked like a trend forming. Every air campaign has a moment where harassment becomes strategy, where probing turns into confidence, where restraint begins to look like permission. This was that moment. The significance of the attack went far beyond physical damage. For the first time in this conflict, Houthi forces had fired surface-to-air missiles at a manned U.S. aircraft and followed up with a near kill against an American drone. That crossed a line. In Washington, the response was immediate. U.S. Central Command briefed leadership within hours. The White House was informed. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't misidentification. It was a deliberate escalation carried out in daylight. Allowing that behavior to stand would invite repetition. Worse, it would normalize the risk. A response was authorized. Within 8 hours, a guided missile destroyer was ordered closer to the Yemeni coastline. Launch authority was granted. But instead of relying on traditional cruise missiles, the Navy chose speed. Inside the destroyer's vertical launch cells sat SM-6 missiles, weapons originally designed for air defense, rarely expended, carefully preserved for the most dangerous threats. But the SM-6 had evolved. In recent years, the missile gained the ability to strike surface targets at extreme speed. Much faster than a Tomahawk, much harder to intercept, and ideal for engaging a mobile launcher before it could relocate. Time mattered. The SA-6 launcher and its associated radar were still believed to be operating near Hodeidah. With a road speed exceeding 30 miles per hour, the launcher could relocate quickly. Delay meant escape. Combat teams had less than 30 minutes to plan the strike. Waypoints were created, flight paths optimized, mission data loaded. Then the order came. At approximately 3:45 a.m. local time, 2 SM-6 missiles erupted from their launch cells and accelerated toward the coast at more than 3 times the speed of sound. Minutes later, they struck. Signals intelligence confirmed the result. The launcher destroyed, the radar silenced, operators eliminated. But deterrence isn't about a single strike. Carrier-based aircraft followed. Wave after wave of F-18S launched from the deck of the Harry S. Truman under cover of darkness, armed with long-range joint standoff weapons. Storage bunkers collapsed. Missile stockpiles burned, command nodes vanished, follow-on strikes continued for hours, degrading logistics, command infrastructure, and remaining air defense assets. By morning, the message was unmistakable. The Houthis had proven they were willing to fire. The United States had proven it would not absorb that risk quietly. While the strikes severely degraded Houthi missile capabilities, they did not eliminate them entirely. That would be left for another day. So the question remains, do you think the United States should do more to destroy the Houthis' ability to wage war? Tap to watch for more.